Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Chris Weidenbaugh, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Craftsman Sam Frater. We warmly welcome the family of Private Edgar Arthur Baugh, whose story will be told shortly. We're honoured to acknowledge General John Murray, Commanding General, Army Futures Command, United States Army, and the accompanying delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. I now invite all who are able to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Thank you. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway lands. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Edgar Arthur Baugh. Edgar Baugh was born in 1895 in Killara, near Casterton in Victoria, one of 7 children born to Eliza and John Baugh. Known as Paddy to his friends and family, he attended the local Baugh State School and later worked as a farmer and labourer in the region. Baugh played in the local pipe band and was engaged to Molly Spring. At the outbreak of the First World War, Baugh announced his desire to sign up and join the army. However, because of his young age, his family refused to allow him to enlist. After his 21st birthday, however, he was able to enlist without any written consent from his parents. He joined the Australian Imperial Force in March 1916 and began training with the 39th Infantry Battalion, a unit mostly comprised of men from the Western District of Victoria, including his home district of Casterton. 2 months later, he sailed from Melbourne for England, where he trained for another 4 months. In late November, Baugh and the 39th Battalion sailed for France, moving into the trenches of the Western Front for the first time on the 9th of December, just in time to endure the freezing winter of 1916 and 1917. In June 1917, Baugh and the 39th Battalion had their first taste of major battle at Mézines in the Flanders region of Belgium. Baugh and the Australian 3rd Division came under heavy German gas and shrapnel attack while approaching the starting position. 500 men were gassed and hundreds more fell to shrapnel wounds. The gas attack was so heavy that less than a third of the men of the 39th Battalion that were meant to take part of the attack could do so. Baugh was among those gassed. He transferred to a field hospital for recovery and was away from the front for 2 weeks. The next major battle for Baugh and the 39th Battalion was at Brunsinde, also in the Flanders region of Belgium. In rainy conditions, the 39th Battalion marched through the night of the 3rd and 4th of October to reach their starting position, constantly under German artillery fire. Once at their starting point, they endured further artillery fire for hours before the attack finally began. At 6 a.m, the British opened their bombardment on the German lines, and the Australian troops climbed from the trenches into no man's land. The troops immediately encountered a German regiment, also marching through no man's land, having begun their attack at the same time. In the face of a larger Anzac attack and heavy fire from the Australian machine guns, the Germans broke and were pushed back towards their trenches. The Australians pursued, but encountered stiff resistance from German concrete pillboxes. The Australians did eventually gain all of their objectives, but at a cost of 6,500 casualties. The rain, mud, bad light, and heavy battlefield smoke made the Battle of Brunsinde a confused affair. Once in no man's land, it was difficult for troops to keep formation, and the units soon became mixed. During the battle, Baugh was among a small group of Australian troops caught in the trench that had been cut off and surrounded by German troops. With the group was Baugh's mate from home, Private Bert Colson. With no access to food, water, or ammunition supplies, their situation became increasingly desperate. Baugh and the men checked to see if it was safe to leave the trench, putting their helmets on their rifles and lifting them above the trench line to see if they attracted German fire. When it seemed the coast was clear, Baugh put his head over the parapet to take a look and was shot by a waiting German sniper. He fell back in the trench into the arms of his mate, Bert Colson, and died almost immediately. Edgar Baugh was 22 years old, survived by his grieving family and fiancée. He was buried in an unmarked grave, and in the chaos of the continuing fighting, the location of his final resting place was lost. His name is recorded on the Menin Gate in Ypres, along with the names of more than 54,000 soldiers of the First World War who have no known grave. On the first anniversary of his death, his fiancée left the following tribute in a local newspaper. A tribute of love to the memory of my dear soldier boy. Private Edgar Arthur Baugh is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Edgar Arthur Baugh, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.